This is my second computer at home with a i5 CPU with 8 gigs of RAM. I have a new SSD I put in, and I installed a spirallinux GNOME edition as you see it here. This is a Debian-based distribution, and that's the only operating system on this SSD. I'll be adding puppylinux F96CE4 to this and configure grub on this machine. So final result should be dual boot with the spirallinux and reboot. Sudo reboot in a Debian-based distribution, and then we will go ahead and reboot into my F12 is what I need to push it on mine, so you'll boot into USB stick, which is Samsung flash drive here, and then we should get a choice, and we're gonna use F96-CE4, and we're gonna boot into it. And we're just gonna boot into it mainly to get a G-parted and partition. So we're gonna use the RAM only choice here, and we will boot using puppylinux Fossa Pup 9.6, and we'll give it a minute here so it boots. And as soon as it boots, we're gonna close we're just going. All we need at this point is that we need to get into system and then G-parted partition manager, and we only have one SDA internal SSD. Now I installed spirallinux using automatic, so this was all filled up, but I resized, right click and resize this partition, so I have some room here, and I gave myself 100 gig, only 50 gig, and this should be more than enough to set up a puppylinux. So when I first bought this SSD, I created a partition table, and because I was going to use it on UEFI machine only, I created a partition table here using GPT. So, and then I automatically installed the spirallinux, and this is what I got. And then now what we need to do is we need to make a space for proper Fossa Pup F96 here. And the first thing we'll do is we're just going to have to create a small EFI partition for boot. So we're going to give ourselves 300 and then megabytes and FAT32, and we'll just give it a label of EFI. And then add. What we want to do is we want to set up a puppy partition. So here we'll go ahead and give ourselves approximately 20 gig is fine, ext4, and then pups, and then enter, and then we're going to leave ourselves a little room here. Since this has a 8 gigs of RAM, I really don't need a swap of partition, but I'll just go through the steps. So roughly about 1 gig is left for swap, and then rest of it is for save folder. And puppylinux, this is a very important partition, so I'm just going to label it as capital SAV, and then we're just going to add, so that's the save folder partition. And then here lastly we're just going to new, and then swap Linux swap here, and this will be swap and add. Now we're gonna go ahead and apply, and there's one last step we need to do, so we're just gonna let it go ahead and write here, complete. Okay, so that's completed. And now, before you quit out of the gparted, what you need to do is right-click on the UEFI partition and make sure you put a manage flag and ESP. Click ESP, and it'll automatically also click the boot, and then close, and then close. Now we're pretty much ready to start installing puppylinux at this point. And so we'll just leave out gparted as a guide, so it'll make it easy for us to recognize exactly which each partition has. So we're just gonna leave it out like that. And right click on the desktop and go to setup and go down to frugal pup. So frugal pup, and we'll go to the settings, and here you have to make sure that we're going to use a separate save location, and then also use autosave, and then OK. Now actual install of the puppylinux. So we're just going to go to the puppy, and then we're just going to go to the ISO, and then now earlier I downloaded F96 CE4, and I'll leave a link to under description. So I'm just going to use the under this here. I'm just going to drag this file into here. So now it's in, and then OK, and then what? It's going to select partition that's going to contain the puppy, F96. So what we need to do is go down to pups, because that's the partition that we created, and then OK. And now next step is very important. You create a folder and CE4, and then at this point make sure you don't click OK. You just need to enter and then OK. So now it wants to know where the save location is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we go to the SAV partition, and then enter, and then we're going to create a folder within it. So under just regular small letter save, we're just going to use that to put it to have the save folder in it. So now it's all set up. So save folder partition location is set up, and it's going to install the puppy Linux. So it's impressive how quickly the operating system gets installed in a puppy Linux. So we're going to OK it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to boot puppy Linux, and we're going to use it in, we're going to put it in SDA1 here, which is SDA4. So SDA5 is the file partition containing, so that's already OK. Yes, that's where we put it in. And then, so that's indeed CE4 is where exactly right. And now we're gonna put the puppy Linux grub file right there. So SDA4. So now we only need a UEFI 64 in my case. So OK, and now it's writing into it, so it's finished. So now we can come out of it. Now we're gonna look at the SDA4, because that's the grub file that's just been created, and we're gonna right click on it, and we're gonna open it up in Genie. And let me try to make the font a little bit bigger. So now we're gonna document line wrapping. So okay, so this is the CE4 entry. So we're gonna need that to add to a boot grub menu on spirallinux. So we're gonna need to copy this. So what we can do is, just to make it cleaner, I'll just put in CE4 here, so it'll make it easier for me to recognize. And then now spirallinux has the grub in SDA2. Okay, so we're just gonna click on it, and then we're gonna get into the boot folder, and then there's grub right there. And then we're gonna right click on, this is the spirallinux grub. So we're just gonna drag it into Genie at this point. And then what we're gonna need to do is go down to, this is where the spirallinux GNOME starts. So we need to make sure that we put it in the right place. So right after the spirallinux GNOME menu entry, what we need to do is, your entry may look very different, but what you need to look for is this spirallinux entry, initial entry. So just gonna return here, and then put it in the, put this here, menu entry for CE4. We're gonna have to add that in, and it finishes right there, so it's pretty short. We're gonna copy and then put it right there, right click, and then paste. Now we're gonna save. Now, because we've gotten the correct parameter for puppylinux partition that was created here, we really don't need this partition because we want to boot here and have the choice of spirallinux and CE4. So we're just gonna erase it, delete it, okay? And we're gonna just go ahead and apply the change. We're gonna get ignore, and then complete, ignore again. Now when we boot, we should be booting only here after we remove the Vento USB stick, and it should have both spirallinux and CE4, and we should be able to log into CE4. And we'll just continue. We'll close everything and then go down to leave and then reboot, and then no save. And let's see what happens. I'm just going to click F12 so we don't get into the Ventoy again. So now we're just going to, so the Samsung flash drive is on, that's the Ventoy. We're just going to click on the first one, Debian. Let's see what happens. Now you see that there is a spirallinux and CE4. Now we're going to use the enter key to get into CE4.